Good afternoon, folks, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to the MMA Sucka podcast. My name's Tim Wheaton, joined as always by the one and only, the editor-in-chief at MMA Sucka, Frazer Krohn. Frazer, how you doing today, sir?
I'm very good, mate. After a phenomenal pay-per-view, I'm looking forward to just jumping in, just breaking everything down. There's plenty of storylines, there's plenty of talking points, and there's plenty of phenomenal performances. So I'm just looking forward to talking it all through with you.
Man, what a weekend, a fight event. We're coming off the heels of UFC 287. Israel Adesanya was able to get revenge after 3 losses in a row to Alex Pereira, and he did it via second round knockout. It's like these are the moments. These are the moments that really cement a legacy, that change the conversation, that change how we talk about a person. I feel like we answered a lot of questions about their rivalry, about Israel Adesanya's career, about where we're going. Just I don't know, what are some of the loose thoughts, and then we can organize it as we go along.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is what we've got to do. There's no sort of timeline really, despite the fact that they fought 4 times. There's no hard and fast. This is what it meant. Then this. For it, there's just a big splurge of talking points and and like you say, just thoughts on the mat. The fact that I'm thinking about one thing and then another thing's popping into my mind, and I think about another thing and another thing just comes out of nowhere. First of all, the performance from Israel Adesanya, phenomenal. He made the adjustments. He didn't make as many adjustments as I thought that he maybe would. But he made the adjustments to not only beat Alex Pereira, but there was no questions. That's not an early stoppage. He eked out a decision. This round could have gone this way. This round could have gone. It wasn't a split decision. It wasn't that he caught him in a guillotine because Alex Pereira is not a very good grappler. It's not that it was decisive.
Yeah.
Then you go into fight week, the pressure that Israel Adesanya was under. I don't think people are, we've heard Israel Adesanya say, look, pressure makes diamonds. That's all very well and good saying that. But in reality, the mystique around this guy completely goes if he's finished by knockout twice. If he loses to the same guy twice, it'll always be the question of, well, you're the middleweight champion because Alex Pereira has moved up in weight, but you never beat Alex Pereira. It's like with Charles Oliveira. Everyone always asked the Khabib question.
Yeah.
For Israel Adesanya, everyone would have always asked the Alex Pereira question and always stated, look, you fought this guy twice, you lost twice. The pressure that he was under, and he just performed he didn't just perform, he performed in the biggest way. And you could just tell that he'd gone through that fight a million times in his head, each fight a million times in his head. He made the adjustments, like I say, and just a phenomenal way to cap off what was a fantastic pay-per-view.
Oh yeah, it was fun out pay-per-view up and down. Let's talk about some of the adjustments for Israel Adesanya, because he didn't do the classic, as I talked about on Heavy Hands, the overcorrection, which would have been trying to grapple, going to your B game, and you're not overly confident in the B game. Instead, he stayed standing and made micro adjustments on the feet. So, and you can see the exact flaws, because Pereira was having moments, was having a really good time, especially with low kicks. He was working him against the cage. The left hook was incoming, but instead all of those became strengths to Adesanya. He understood when the low kicks were coming. He was working off the cage rather than clinching off the cage, and he threw an inside hook against the left hook. There was these micro adjustments, like absolutely a brilliant performance, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think he, like you say, he made the adjustments not only for in fight with switching to southpaw when Alex Pereira was eating up the leg. Not everyone could. I think we're not putting enough emphasis on the fact that he's completely switched. Yes, let's not forget Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira, phenomenal kickboxers, phenomenal stand-up strikers, should we say? Regardless of their skills on the feet, it's not easy to be fighting out of orthodox and then switching up and just be able to be as effective, if not more effective, fighting out of southpaw. Everything's different. You're putting your weight, realistically, the whole point was he switched southpaw because the lead leg's getting chewed up. So the weight shifting, the being able to slip out of shots, the setups are different, of course, from a southpaw stance. Where you finish after throwing a shot from southpaw is completely different from where you finish throwing a shot from orthodox. You've got to be a little bit, when you're moving backwards, you've got to be a little bit more aware of where the cage is when you're southpaw, if you're used to fighting orthodox. And he did that seamlessly. He was as effective, if not more effective, fighting out of southpaw as he was fighting out of orthodox. But like you say, there wasn't an overcorrection. I wrote a piece last week things to look at. Should he look to grapple? And there was an opportunity in that second round where he could look to grapple. Alex Pereira threw a kick, Adesanya caught it, and that's how he got the takedown in the first fight. He caught the kick, he ran the gauntlet, he countered the hip throw attempt of Alex Pereira, and managed to spin him around and take him over the standing leg of his own standing leg and get Alex Pereira to the ground. In this one, that didn't even go through his head. We saw seconds of grappling when Adesanya got pushed up against the fence in that second round before the knockout blow came. I'm not even sure if we're counting it as a second or two of grappling, because he just grabbed the clinch but then he swung off the clinch, and we could, that was, like you say, these micro adjustments is what essentially won him the fight. But it was his ability to have that mindset. Huge props to Eugene Bareman, who obviously has implemented that game plan in Adesanya all camp. He looked like the smaller guy in there, and we knew that he would. But his ability, I think that for me, the two things that he really altered was that ability or that willingness to sit in the pocket just for one or two strikes more and throw with Alex Pereira. We've seen him knock out Paulo Costa when he stayed in the pocket with Paulo Costa, and he caught Paulo Costa, he caught Robert Whittaker with that looping wide hook. He didn't want to, in that first fight, he didn't want to stay in the pocket with Alex Pereira for the obvious reason. This time he certainly did. And I think the second adjustment is maybe not an adjustment, but it was his intention to throw that sort of jab, pause, right hand that he knocked, that he wobbled Alex Pereira with in the first fight. We saw him constantly go into that strike. I think he must have thrown that combination where you put the jab out there, but you don't pull it back. You put the jab out there and you keep it there, and then you try and land the looping overhand right. Phenomenal stuff from Adesanya, and it cemented him as one of the greats. This is what greatness is. It's coming back from adversity. It's coming back from defeat, and Israel Adesanya did just that.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. I'm a little bit sick right now, but you're absolutely correct. There's just so many things. But yeah, the jab and then like the block, so the jab stays out, so it like blocks your eyesight and then it comes over the top. That was a success he was having in the first fight. Really managed to use a lot of that in the second fight. So he took it was like it was like a study of like he did his homework better. He made the better adjustments coming into this fight. But I also feel like if you did a best of 7, you get a weird just like back and forth, because each guy's going to be making adjustments each time out. And I actually think you get a really interesting fight. However, I think it's done at this point from what the UFC is saying and from what Israel is saying, of like, it's done. I want Alex Pereira to go up to light heavyweight is what the UFC is saying. Do you think that's the right move, or should he hang out at middleweight a little bit more?
It's difficult because this week we had the trilogy announcement that nobody asked for between Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes.
Man, Vancouver is like, Canada never gets good.
Yeah, come on, guys. Go on. For me, just quickly touching on that fight. The first fight, massive upset. Second fight, decisive. And there's other contenders at middleweight. First fight, decisive. Second fight, decisive the other way. There is a call for a third fight between the two of them, of course, because it's 1-1 in MMA. But Israel's got a point. Alex Pereira was given the shot at Israel Adesanya because of their history outside of the UFC.
Yeah.
He's got a point by the way that he says, look, go out and prove yourself against other. I'm not sure if he's, aside from Sean Strickland, he hasn't got a win inside the top 10, and Sean Strickland was kind of made for him.
Yeah.
Go and fight a Paulo Costa, go and fight a Robert Whittaker if you're to stay at 185. If I'm Alex Pereira, I am in the gym today, packing back on the muscle and getting myself up to 205, because let's be honest, he's not going to be a small 205er. Like, when Israel went up and challenged Jan Blachowicz, he was, I think he weighed in at what, 202, 203 pounds, maybe, way under the limit, and didn't put on any weight. And we saw in the grappling that's obviously to his detriment. Alex Pereira is going to be a big, reasonable size light heavyweight, and there's far better matchups for him at light heavyweight. If we just pull up the light heavyweight rankings, the champion alone is a far better fight for Alex Pereira than a Robert Whittaker fight. Just stylistically, you've got Jamal Hill. a stand-up guy. Yuri Pachka, a stand-up guy. Ankalaev's a tough fight, but he's
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
a tough fight for anyone. Jan Blachowicz, he's not known. He's a phenomenal striker, and he's not known as an elite wrestler. So that's a potential. Rakic, Smith, and then you're looking
yeah.
down. He's not fighting down as far as excuse me, Krylov and Johnny Walker, but Johnny Walker, Volkan Ozdemir, Ryan Spann, Dominic Reyes. These guys are kind of made for an Alex Pereira, and
Yeah.
it's the move up in weight is not only interesting, but I think it's necessary at this point. I wonder, Israel Adesanya isn't a one punch, starching knockout artist like an Alex Pereira or or a Jamal Hill that we've seen just knock people dead with one shot.
Hmm.
He's an accumulation of strikes and then he catches you.
Yeah.
Alex Pereira now in 2 fights has been wobbled badly by Israel Adesanya. That the end of the first round and obviously midway through the second round in this one. How much is that weight cut having an effect on Alex Pereira's chin, his ability to take a shot, and his ability to perform in there? The first round was pretty, not an awful lot happened, but both guys went back to their stool completely and utterly, no fatigue was kicking in. Now, I wonder if Alex Pereira could push a pace better at 205. Coming up, he's going to be slightly quicker. He's still going to be heavy. Let's not pretend that just because he's going up in weight, that power is going to leave him.
Hmm.
It most certainly is not. I want to see him against. I'd love to see him against Yuri Pachka. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Pachka deserves a shot at the title next. But an Alexander Rakic, even an Anthony Smith, if he gets through his next fight,
Yeah.
prove yourself at 205. Beat some contenders. I don't. The only thing with Alex Pereira is that he's not the youngest. He's not the youngest guy. But if he's seriously about this sort of life, he's going to get back to the drawing board. He's going to get put on the muscle. So he'll still have to cut to 205. It's
Yeah.
not going to be an easy cut for him to 205. It's going to be easier than 185, but it's not going to be an easy cut by any stretch of the imagination. Would I be annoyed at a fourth fight? However many for the 20th fight between the two guys, absolutely not. I think Israel Adesanya needed that rivalry because he's beaten.
Yep.
He's beaten number 2 twice. He's beaten number 3 twice. He dominated number 4. He's beaten number 5. And then you're looking at Dricus du Plessis at number 6, which is entertaining itself. But going down, he's beaten number 8. He's beaten number 11. He is beaten the PFL champion, Rob Wilkinson. He's
Yeah.
dominated the division. He needed this rivalry to really cement himself as one of the greats, and that's exactly what he did on Saturday night.
Well, that's just it. We were talking about that. I've always argued that greatness in sports is not defined through numbers. It's defined through story. And for example, like in basketball, LeBron James has surpassed Michael Jordan on almost every number front, but Jordan still has the better story. He's still the great. Wayne Gretzky is pretty much being lapped by Ovechkin at this point. Doesn't matter. The story was there the entire time. Stories is what makes greatness. And I feel like Anderson Silva really wasn't put on that greatness mountain until he really had a foible, a rival in a Chael Sonnen, right? It really takes a rival to push you to that next level. If you're lapping the competition, that's cool. That's fine. That's fine. But we don't talk about Demetrius Johnson nearly as much as we even talk. We talk about Kamaru Usman closer to greatness than we talk about Demetrius Johnson, fair or not. But if you're just lapping the competition, you really do need a rival. And I feel like this was perfect for Israel Adesanya because even a guy like me who is maybe a little bit biased to the classics, when Israel Adesanya won via knockout, I thought maybe he's the greatest. Maybe he is among that tier. Maybe he's alongside Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre, Fedor, people like this. Maybe he's up there, right? Go ahead on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just the mystique around him. He had the dog collar on all week. There's a story behind that. People were alluding to what the story is behind that. After his post-fight interview, after his first fight, there's a new middleweight. I'm the dog. I pissed all over this octagon or whatever he said.
Yeah.
He was wearing, or maybe it was a reference to a film where this guy wears a similar sort of dog collar and gets it taken off. The whole thing and the mystique around him, just as far as the three arrows into Pereira, as it were, after the knockout, or searching out his son and to mock his son.
Gosh, good stuff.
Whatever your view is on that, I don't mind it. I
I
think
don't.
it's
I
quite
don't really
funny.
care.
It is what it is. It's a bit shithousery, but I'm here for it. I think it's quite funny. But just there was moments in the fight where you could just see that Israel Adesanya was just more measured. He was just slightly. Alex Pereira, did he respect Israel Adesanya's power? I don't think so. To be throwing shots with your hands kind of down by your sides. Alex Pereira's guard is a strange one anyway, because he's a long guy. He keeps his guard out quite far, uses his arms, his forearms to block the shots, and then uses obviously a lot of head and hip movement. But he was biting on feints quite a lot from Israel Adesanya. There was a point I think it was in the first round, it could have been in the second round of the fight on Saturday night, where
Right.
Izzy threw a shot a straight, and Alex, or sorry, feinted a straight. Alex dipped off massively to his left-hand side. And then within a matter of seconds later, Izzy then throws the jab and throws a big looping right hook because Alex was dipping off to that left-hand side. So he was making those micro reads in the fight itself. And that's obviously what eventually led to, he was making the reads of Alex throws the big knee up against the cage when he supposedly had Israel hurt. Israel lands that 1-2. It's just a shorter shot. It was a straight down the pipe rather than the looping hooks of Pereira. And like you say, it's numbers are good, storylines are better. Unfortunately, MMA is, and we were talking about it last week, and is linked heavily to professional wrestling. Yes. What's professional wrestling all about? You don't think of, John Cena and Triple H as it's a 16-time world champion. Do you remember John Cena's rivalry with, so-and-so with Brock Lesnar? Do you remember Triple H's rivalry with, Batista and all this?
Yeah.
Do you remember Israel Adesanya's rivalry with Alex Pereira? Yes, I do. And I'm going to remember it for a long, long time to come, because, if Alex does go up, I think, there's a little bit of talk and a little bit of bad blood there between Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis, but that doesn't get me. Israel toys with Dricus. He's custom made for an Israel Adesanya dominant display, and it's the storylines, it's the rivalry, it's the jeopardy for both men in there that really do that for me. And Israel Adesanya for me cemented himself as, let's be honest, a Hall of Famer on Saturday night, because you don't, he entered the UFC in 2018. He's been maybe the most active fighter since then at championship level. Performance of the night bonuses are plenty. I can't remember the last time that he didn't headline. He's headlined every single pay-per-view that he's fought on since UFC 243. He's had what? If you just look at the net, there's not a single gimme on his entire record. I mean, on paper, his easiest fight, Brad Tavares.
That's a tough fight. Brad Tavares is good.
He's ranked. I imagine Brad Tavares. He only recently dropped out of the top 10, top 15. Israel Adesanya is one of the greats. Yeah, and I don't think we'll appreciate him until he's kind of moved on from the UFC, but I don't see him moving on from the UFC anytime soon. He's 34, 33, 34. Phenomenal performance, phenomenal storyline, and just, a phenomenal end to what was, like I say, a fantastic pay-per-view.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really tough to figure out what's next, because the middleweight division is a little bit uninteresting. So let's look at the rest of the card, because that's going to be a funner one than looking at what to do with that. Gilbert Burns gets it done. Out grapples, out strikes, out takedowns, beats the hell out of Jorge Masvidal and retires the man. What do you make of it? I mean, this was what we all expected to have happened. Gilbert Burns definitely got his stock raised among the eyes of most people, but it was a foregone conclusion. And I think my only real notes from this is Jorge actually looked worse than I expected.
Yeah, I completely echo and co-sign everything you're saying there. He just, as simple or as complex as MMA can be, this is as simple as Gilbert was just better than Jorge Masvidal. everywhere the fight went. On the feet, especially in that final round, not even close. On the ground, of course, it wasn't close. The takedowns with relative ease, 4 out of 6 takedowns landed for Gilbert, especially that big one at the end of the first round that kind of cemented that as his round.
Mm-hmm.
The big one in the second when he kind of slammed Jorge down. It just wasn't competitive, but we kind of knew that going in. You got Gilbert Burns ranked number 5, who obviously hasn't gone up in the rankings because he's fought down. Jorge Masvidal's dropped 2 places now in the rankings, but
Yeah.
It's I just don't know. Jorge said he would have retired even if he would have won. Absolutely not true. He would have called out Leon Edwards. I cannot believe that for a second. But it was just, he just never got. He looked every one of his 38 years in there, and he looked every one of his 50 professional fights, or however many he's had. 35 wins, 17 losses, including 4 on the bounce now.
Yeah.
It was a tough one. It was a tough one for you could have put Jorge against anyone in the top 15 in Miami and it would have sold well.
Yes.
Gilbert is not a good fight for them to have given him for what is essentially, his retirement fight. But, props to Gilbert, and he rocked the mic afterwards. Look, release me or give me a title shot. And I think he deserves it. It's hard to deny, he's, in my opinion, he's the second most deserving of a title shot at 170 behind Bilal Muhammad. None of those guys are getting a title shot. It's going to be Colby Covington in July, but it must be frustrating for Burns, because I think if he would have finished Jorge, he would have had a much, much better sort of argument for being the title challenger. But, with a performance like that, 15-minute decision over a guy who, Jorge didn't exactly do Burns any favors with the way that he was fighting. He was very reserved. He was very, his chin held up, so that's not done Jorge, it's done Gilbert any favors either. It's difficult to now argue that Gilbert, off the back of that performance, deserves a title shot. Whereas you compare that to Bilal Muhammad, he just started Sean Brady and finished him in the second round.
Yep,
that's a championship. That's a number 1 contender performance. Whereas Gilbert Burns I'm not so sure was, but supposedly he'll be the backup in July for the welterweight title fight, and then obviously, as we know, all backups now for some reason get an immediate title shot unless your name's Anthony Smith, who obviously weighed in January, and is not really anywhere close to a title shot. But it is what it is.
Well, yeah, that's okay. So welterweight, I just it's not Colby. It just can't be Colby. This is so stupid. It can't be Colby. I'm not interested in it. None of his wins have aged well at all in terms of has he beat anyone relevant, still fighting, still ranked? No. Colby beat a lot of guys who were on the way out and retired, and now they're trying to give him a title shot. Forget about it. The scary thing is Gilbert Burns. We're Leon Edwards fans. Gilbert Burns might just run the gauntlet against Leon Edwards. He's a scary guy, right?
For sure. It's just because he's so good everywhere. He's I think where he might fall down slightly is the fact that he's not the best wrestler, and he's a very good jiu-jitsu wrestler.
True.
He's not the best he's not better than Kamaru Usman at wrestling. He's not better than Colby Covington at wrestling. If you look at the guys that he's fought and sort of dominated as of late, Stephen Thompson, just a striker.
True.
Neil Magny, historically not got good takedown defense. Jorge Masvidal, everyone goes on about his takedown defense, but I was looking at some stats last night. He's been taken down 17 times in his past 4 fights. So, okay. 72% takedown defense, yes. 17 takedowns in his past 4 fights kind of speak volumes to it. And, maybe suggest that he's not the best at defending the takedown. So, but then you compare that to Leon Edwards, phenomenal takedown defense, absolutely,
True.
Probably one of the best takedown defense in the welterweight division. So it's going to be difficult for Leon if he gets through Colby, who I think he will get through Colby. I think Colby is just a worse version of Kamaru Usman. He hasn't got as much power. He's got better cardio, and he's more, he runs a more relentless pace, but just not as good as Kamaru Usman, as both of their fights have shown.
Yep.
And at this moment in time, Leon Edwards is better than Kamaru Usman, as both of their fights have shown. So, MMA math doesn't work, but styles make fights, and I think stylistically, Colby just isn't good enough to beat Leon Edwards, especially if it's going to take place in London with Leon having the home crowd behind him again.
Yep.
We'll have to see if that does become official. I'd love for them to just go left field and say, right, it's in July. It's Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad.
Yeah, I know.
Jump to the back of the line. But, unfortunately, Colby and Dana, Colby must have some suspect photos of Dana or something because, it's not logical to give him the fight, but it is what it is, I guess.
Man, everything around Colby Covington has been so weird because he's basically said that of like, I have some juice or some secret stuff, and I know something, so I'm gonna get it. Okay, whatever. It's just dumb as heck. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm just not interested in Colby. But going down the card here, Rob Font, Adrian Yanez, first round knockout. It wasn't the cleanest, wasn't the prettiest, but if you grab a guy by the back of his head and punch him in the face, you're gonna probably knock him out. It almost wasn't what I expected. In terms of, I still picked Rob Font. I was like, Rob Font's going to jab him up for 3 rounds, basically. Nope. What the hell was this? Tell me about this fight. Bantamweight is just amazing.
I need to go with my gut and what I say on the podcast. On the podcast, I was like, Rob Font, he's got the experience, he's got the better jab, he can keep Yanez on the end of the jab. Submitted my stat picks. I was like, Yanez, round 2 knockouts. Oh, God, so what am I doing? And then you watch the fight, and it's like, of course that's what's going to happen. Rob Font has got a piston-like jab, and he kept Yanez on the end of that jab. I'd say all night, but it only lasted 2 minutes and 57 seconds. Yeah. And I think what really kind of happened in this fight is that Yanez just couldn't get his attacks. Yes, look, if you look at the guys, both of the guys' faces after the fight, you think, without knowing the result, you think Yanez has won that by knockout. Look at the state of Rob Font's face. But Rob Font has used his experience of, I'm just going to keep you on the end of my jab. I'm just going to box you. I don't need to be swinging. And, my boxing, my jab, the jab, they say, the saying in boxing goes, a good right hand wins you titles. A good right hand takes you around the country, and you can knock out everyone in your country. A good jab takes you around the world, and that's exactly what Rob Font showed there. He was using that jab to set up future attacks, and I think there was a time that he hurt Yanez, and we saw Yanez run away, and there was too much time left in the round for Yanez to survive, and I don't think he ever recovered well enough. Rob Font, like you said, just grab a guy by the back of the head, just shovel punches into his face. And I don't know, I could, I think the details on UFCstats.com just call it a punch to head at distance. It was a hybrid shovel, uppercut, right hook, right hand, kind of just, it doesn't matter. It worked to great effect. But, best 3 minutes in the UFC this year so far. If we're doing when our end of year awards kick off, if we do a, best 3 minutes of the year, this is getting my vote already. I don't think it's a little bit too niche for us to do our end of year awards and just limiting it to 3 minutes, but it is what it is. Phenomenal fight, just as advertised, and massive learning curve for Adrian Yanez and a massive win for Rob Font, who is in need of that win. I wrote a piece yesterday, biggest winners and losers from UFC 287. Rob Font's one of the biggest winners because he needed that win badly. If you're number 6, you're kind of defending your ranking against number 12. You don't only need to win, you need to win in decisive fashion, and that is exactly what he did. I think Yanez learns from it, but I think it's a really good performance from Rob Font. And, he kind of called out Figueiredo after the fact. Book that fight. I'm here for that fight.
And that's the thing with bantamweight of like Adrian Yanez, very promising up and comer, was on an impressive win streak. This loss, he still has a road to the title. A few more, like it's a style makes fights kind of division. A few wins here, a few wins there. He's right back in the conversation again. But 2 people who may not be back in the conversation, Kevin Holland and Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think this was as expected. I think Kevin Holland was way bigger than I expected, but he was sharper, he was faster, he was a better striker overall.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I completely agree with you. I am wondering whether Kevin Holland might be the hardest hitting welterweight in the division, because if, I can't see Kamaru Usman knocking someone down with a back fist. He knocked Santiago Ponzinibbio down with a back fist in that first round. In the third round, when the knockout blow came, can you imagine if he had his feet under him when he landed that left hook. He landed it from one side of the octagon to the other. And I think this is a lesson to whoever Kevin Holland faces next. He's fringe top 15. He obviously hasn't broken into the top 15 with a win over Ponzinibbio.
Yeah.
I think, what to learn from Kevin Holland is when you fight Kevin Holland, you are not safe anyway. It doesn't matter if you're over the other side of the octagon. You're not safe. Like I said, he landed that shot against Ponzinibbio from way out of where he should have been able to land the shot with any power.
Mm-hmm.
What's next for Ponzinibbio? He's on a tough run. I think maybe one or two more fights and he calls it a day. But for Holland, obviously he called out Masvidal. That one's not going to happen. I can see maybe a Gunnar Nelson fight. A matchup of styles maybe in July in London. Gunnar only seems to fight in London these days, but I don't know. It's a difficult. Maybe I think from what I understand, he's got a fight booked. But we don't know against who yet. But a Jack Della Maddalena fight is a fun one to have. I think he fights more recently than he fights sooner. Sorry, than Holland would be able to turn around. But we know that Holland doesn't need a big training camp. Maybe now he's at welterweight, he needs a little bit more of a training camp to get the weight down. But there's fun fights out there for Kevin Holland. He's not going to be a contender. He's got he's not well rounded enough, but it's the Kevin Holland of old, fun fights in there talking, getting these crazy knockouts, rocking the mic as he does. I don't need to see Kevin Holland against a wrestler that's just going to wrestle him for 15 minutes. I want to see Kevin Holland against a Michel Pereira, we saw him against Stephen Thompson and look how that played out. I just want him in fun fights where there's not a lot of jeopardy for him. Because, when he is on it, he's on it in a big way, and it's fun.
He's a really fun fighter. Raul Rosas Jr. lost. The thing is, with his age, I don't think this is emblematic of something that's going to be a weakness forever. This is something that he can work on and get better. It's just like usually people take these losses in like the LFA or your local whatever, right? You want to take these losses like Kamaru Usman did. It's like it was not the UFC. He's just taking his losses in the UFC. If you're a person who is, we still have good reason to be optimistic about the future of Raul Rosas, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think this loss is going to be absolutely vital for him. He's 18 years old on a main card of a pay-per-view packed Miami arena. What I would say is that he was pretty bad. We knew that he was a grappler. He was pretty badly exposed in this one as just a grappler. This is mixed martial arts, and someone needs to kind of tell him that. I'm just looking, taking into account this went the full 15 minutes. 2 strikes landed.
That's not great.
19 thrown.
Yeah, that's not great.
As opposed to 115 thrown and 83 landed by Christian Rodriguez. This is mixed martial arts. He was so the shots were so 3 of 8 takedowns in the first round, none of 5 in the second, none of 3 in the third. His shots were just so telegraphed. He's total strike, not 19 thrown, 15 of those were in the final round when he was being forced to keep it on his feet a little bit longer. What you want to, just a simple, just putting the jab out there, throwing a little leg kick, making Christian Rodriguez think. Even in the main event, we saw Israel Adesanya touch the knee of Alex Pereira just to keep him guessing. Raul Rosas, if he touched the knee of Christian Rodriguez is throwing his hips all the way back, especially after that first round, where, let's be honest, Raul Rosas dominated that first round. If he touches the knee of Christian Rodriguez and throws a big overhand right, the hips tip back, the arms go down, the head's exposed. And I just don't think he had it in his locker, to be honest. But like I say, he's 18 years old.
Yeah.
Co-signing with what you said, often these people take the losses in, a Cage Warriors or an LFA or a CFFC or a much smaller sort of local promotion, as it were. Raul Rosas is just taking his losses in the UFC, but he's 18 years old. Let's not rush this guy, like we did with Chase Hooper and just see him get absolutely battered. And, I think obviously cardio is an issue, but we kind of knew that after that first round, after he put absolutely everything into that first round.
Mm-hmm.
He's lucky that he's in the bantamweight division where, strength isn't a massive issue. Yes, he's considerably smaller than some of the other guys, but at 18, in the bantamweight division, he's not going to be sort of outman strength by the higher up the divisions he gets, of course, but you're not going to put an 18-year-old middleweight in there because he'll just physically be too small. Rosas didn't look physically too small. He just looked skill-wise at a deficit. But like I say, phenomenal learning curve. He needs to spend his defensive grappling is obviously questionable, as we saw in this one, but
Yes.
just work on those hands, man. Just every day in the gym. He's Mexican. There's hundreds of Mexican boxing gyms. Just get in a boxing gym for the next 5 months. He can take a year, 2 years off, still be 20 years old. He won't. I think he'll fight again this year, but I want to see him for the next 6 months in boxing gyms, in kickboxing gyms, just learning the stand up, learning how to set up your shots, learning how to, throw the jab out there, shift your weight onto it. He was caught a lot in this fight as well. For Rodriguez to land 83 out of 115 strikes, he was caught a lot. So he clearly doesn't have the head movement and the slick ability. So, get in a boxing gym, spar many rounds in boxing gloves, and just it's a brilliant learning curve for Raul Rosas Jr. I think he'll realistically he'll owe Christian Rodriguez a lot going forwards in his career.
Completely co-sign with you. Yeah, he's diving on takedowns way too aggressively. He's good offensive grappling, not a ton of defensive grappling. He can be hammer, he can't be nail. These are things that you can work on. All right, let's do a quick reconnect. Upcoming this weekend, we got the featherweight division keeps moving forward. Max Holloway is going to be meeting Arnold Allen from England. Frazer, I'll start with you. What do you feel? What do you think? What do you see in this one?
I hate this fight.
No, I know.
I
get it. No, I get it.
From a personalities perspective, I hate this fight. From a fight perspective, I love this fight. I don't want to see what I mean by that. I don't want to see. I'm a Max Holloway fan. I'm an Arnold Allen fan. I don't want to see any of these guys lose.
Yeah.
At all. I don't want to see Arnold Allen potentially get dominated like Calvin Kattar did. I don't want to see Max Holloway get hit with those big shots like Dan Hooker did. It's a phenomenal fight. It's a phenomenal matchup. It's a matchup of, Arnold Allen is on paper the heavier hitter. Max Holloway is, yes, he's got 3 losses on his record in recent fight. 4 losses in recent times on his record. But look at who those losses are coming to. Dustin Poirier at 155, and then 3 losses, 2 of which were pretty close, to Alexander Volkanovski, possibly the best featherweight we've ever seen. Like, let's be honest here. Max Holloway is still at the top end of it. He's 31. He could just be entering his prime. And he's 30 fights into his professional MMA career.
Yep.
On the other side, you got Arnold Allen, 19-1. I think 10 fight UFC win streak, 12 fight overall win streak. He's got 1 loss on his record back in 2014.
That's where you want to take him, in some other organization a while ago.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I'm pretty sure if he rematches that, he wins pretty convincingly. Let's be honest here. But going back to Arnold Allen in recent time, he was difficult to be a fan of Arnold Allen because he never fought. He fought very irregularly. Once in 2019. Sorry, once in 2020, once in 2021. But then he got the big one, the one that really sort of pushed him into the main sort of talking point of the featherweight division against Dan Hooker, that co-main event in London last March, first round blowout. And then he got the main event slot against Calvin Kattar. Without a doubt, that didn't go the way that he sort of maybe envisaged it going. But he won that first round pretty convincingly, in my opinion. I think Calvin Kattar obviously suffers the knee injury. The fight stopped after 8 seconds in the second round, but let's not get it confused here. Max Holloway is elite and is at the elite end of the division, and it's going to be a horrible fight for Arnold Allen if he lets Max Holloway get on his game. It's going to be a horrible fight for Arnold Allen. Likewise, if Max Holloway's defense isn't what it previously was, because we saw him get caught a lot against Holloway in that against Volkanovski in their trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a long night for Max Holloway if he lets Arnold Allen get on his game. It's such a fascinating fight, and I cannot wait until Saturday night to watch it.
Oh, 100% co-signing with you. The thing is with Max Holloway, the book is so written on him already in terms of what his striking systems are. Arnold Allen, uh, good. His first line of defense is moving his feet, and I do like to see that he does try to have a lot of positional control. And the thing is, like, I just feel like if Max Holloway is at his prime, it should be a pretty good fight for Max Holloway. However, I will concede some ground and ask the question, is Max Holloway still in his prime? Genuinely. Has he lost a step? Is he a bit slower? Because even being 5% slower in the featherweight division, that's going to make multitudes of difference.
For sure. And I think this fight is the fight that we find out if Max Holloway is past his prime, because I can't really take an awful lot from those Alexander Volkanovski fights just because it's Alexander Volkanovski and how good he is.
Right.
If Max looks off a beat again, he's had a little bit of time off since when was his last fight? His last fight was in July of last year, so he's taken a little bit of time off. 10 months off. Mm-hmm. How's the weight cut gonna go? We always have to ask the questions. How's the weight cut gonna go for Max Holloway, because he is a big guy that cuts a lot of weight, and he has had issues with weight cutting in the past. Mm-hmm. This is the fight where we see if he's kind of over the hill, or if he is the guy that we think that we all think that he is, and the guy that he was, and the guy that he can be. This is the fight that we find out.
So what do you think? What is your final prediction on this one?
I'm going to go British bias. I'm going to go Arnold Allen, maybe by third or fourth round TKO. I really think that he could make... I think he has to start quick. Max is traditionally a slow starter. Mm-hmm. Arnold, traditionally quick starter. I think their styles, I think the first round is going to be really telling. Can Max weather the storm of Arnold Allen? I hope that he can, so we get a slightly longer fight. But I think Arnold Allen, he's slightly more well-rounded. He's got a better wrestling game. He's got a better ground game than Max Holloway if he can get it to the floor. It's a massive if, because, we know what Holloway's takedown defense is like. But I'm going Arnold Allen, whether that's British bias or not. Mentally, I'm not quite sure yet, but we'll find out later in the week when we hear from both guys. You see both guys on the scales on Friday. We'll see. Arnold Allen's in phenomenal shape. Yes. Max Holloway always comes in phenomenal shape. So hopefully we get a war for as long as it lasts. And I am picking Arnold Allen, but A, I'm not confident in my pick, and B, I wouldn't be mad if Max Holloway came away with his hand raised.
Well, yeah, and Max Holloway, I think even going to war against him like a Yair Rodriguez it still raises your stock. You may have lost, but overall, it really does help your career out a lot. And nothing's wrong with that. That's an okay thing. Losing to Max Holloway, there's no shame there. But you are arguing for Arnold Allen to get the win. Thing is, it's hard to tell because he was taking gaps due to injuries here and there. I think he had major hand injuries for a while, if I remember correctly. Or am I thinking of somebody else in this case? But it's tough to really get a read on him because he has developed quite well in between fights. And if we see that same kind of trajectory, maybe he is a better striker. But it's a great fight. It's a really fun fight. What else do we see on this weekend that we're really that we're into? Oh, Edson Barboza versus Billy Quarantillo. There's some good stuff here. There's some okay stuff. What do you see?
Yeah, I'm excited for the Edson Barboza Billy Q fight. Of course, Billy Q just war after war after war, and Barboza just war after war after war. I'm excited for the light heavyweight debut of Tanner Boser. I think, I saw a picture of him the other day. He's in phenomenal shape. We've got the return of Chris Gutierrez. I think, Gutierrez is kind of, he entered the last fight as the bad guy. He's the guy that knocked out Frankie Edgar in Frankie Edgar's last ever fight. I think this one's going to be slightly more straightforward for him against Pedro Munoz, but he has to, mind his P's and Q's. Clay Guida, we're rolling out because that's what, Clay Guida hasn't fought in about 2 weeks. So we're getting Clay Guida out because it's been, far too long since we've seen Clay. When's the last time Clay fought? I mean,
didn't he just get beat up like a month ago?
I mean, he fought in
December.
He fought in December. It's been 4 whole months since we've seen him last. I mean, I'm surprised we haven't seen him more regularly, to be honest. He's slacking, but I'm also excited for the strawweight debut of Gillian Robertson. I interviewed her a few months ago now, releasing an article with sort of looking at that interview, how Gillian Robertson sees her strawweight debut going, and talking about tough a little bit. So keep an eye on the site for that. And I'm also looking at Nicolaus' fight against Brandon Royval. I think Nicolaus should be a heavy favorite going into this one, in my opinion. Don't think he is that big a favorite. I think he probably is the favorite. Just having a look now. Yeah, he's a slight favorite against Brandon Royval. Royval coming off 2 wins. Nicolaus, just for want of a better word, he's just better, in my opinion. I think Nicolaus, if this hits the ground, it's Nicolaus get a fight all day, and we could be looking at the next flyweight contender. Where are these guys ranked? Nicolaus ranked number 5, Royval's ranked number 4. So, after Pantoja gets a shot at Brandon Moreno, we could be looking at, either Royval or Nicolaus the next contender, which is exciting times for flyweights finally moving on after the 20 fights that Moreno and Figueiredo had.
Yeah. Man, it's actually got some of the better ones. When they're not in the apex, the UFC is clearly trying. Like, this is good up and down. Almost any of these, like a Bill Algeo versus TJ Brown, potentially could have been an Apex main event or something like that, or like a Clay Guida easily could have been a main event in the Apex. But up and down, it is quite a tight card. I will, of course, shout out, like, it's Max Holloway. Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen. That is the key. That is the main fight to keep your eye on here. Jocelyn Edwards, I think, was one I did. I think I did a prospect watch on her a while back. Just so inconsistent is the problem.
Yeah,
I want her to
problem.
be good. You've seen her, right?
Yeah, for sure. And she's taken on Lucy Pudilova, who was good in the UFC, then got cut, and then came back to the UFC.
Yeah,
she worked her way back to the UFC, rightfully so. But yeah, like you say, with Jocelyn Edwards, again, good fighter. Strange career so far in the UFC. It hasn't quite. I think she's been flirting in between 2 divisions, and is she a flyweight? Is she a bantamweight? I have no idea, mate, to be honest, but it's a fun one. Lucy Pudilova always comes to fight, which is, that's fun.
Absolutely. Anything else we got going on this weekend? I can't think of anything else that we're potentially
PFL returns again. Third show in as many weeks. PFL 3 this time. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, the main card is gonna air before the prelims.
The main card is gonna. Oh, come on!
Yeah. So I'm not quite, because I'm just looking. This is as per Tapology, and also on Twitter that the main card is going to air before the prelims, and on PFL's website, this card's stacked. Yes. Sabah Sai, last year's champion, is in the main event. You've got Stevie Ray on the card. Mm-hmm. You've got the debut of Shane Burgos taking on Olivier Aubin-Mercier on the prelims, supposedly. And you've also got last year's finalist Delano Taylor taking on Magomed Umlatov. Supposedly, first fight of the night. I'm very, very confused about the lineup of this fight card. So it's one, on the poster you've got Aubin-Mercier and Sabah Sai, but supposedly they're 6-7 fights apart. I don't know how this fight card is going to play out schedule wise, but just tune in from the start, because you don't want to miss any of the fight. For all I know, Shane Burgos could be fighting Sabah Sai. I don't know. It's so confusing to me. We could have Delano Taylor facing. I do not know. Delano Taylor. I can't for 1 minute think Delano Taylor, last year's finalist, will be fighting the first fight, the curtain jerker. I'm not sure, but tune in from they're great fights, so tune in from the first fight to the last, because they're all really good fights. You just don't want to miss it, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you, with the UFC, you're pretty sure if you tune in for 3 a.m. UK time, sort of 9-10 p.m. US time, you're guaranteed to see the main card.
Yeah.
With this one, I've got no idea, but I know what I do know is that there's a lot of competitive fights. They're all very exciting. It's a Friday night card, as PFL often do. So just tune in on Friday night. We'll have results up on the website, but
Yeah.
I've got no idea what order this fight card's in, but it's exciting. Whatever the order, it's exciting.
Yeah, Stevie Ray's back, which I think that's tough. Like he was just suffering, wasn't he? Like his daughter or something like that had some issues, but
Yeah, it's rough, but the community, the MMA community came together, which is great to see. I saw PFL, I saw Dana White donate hundreds of thousands of pounds. So, fair play to those.
oh yeah, absolutely. And I think okay, so this PFL, we're still in regular season. Like we're not into the tournament yet, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. So you're looking at, these guys are kind of competing to get into the semi-final of the tournament. Obviously you get X amount of points for a win.
Yep.
You get more points if you finish them. You get more points if you finish them in the first round. So, and it's only the top 4 guys and girls from the sort of playoffs, as it were, get into the semi-finals, into the finals, and that shot at $1 million back. Probably, if it's the same sort of schedule as last year, it's November, December time. So, it's exciting.
Let's rock it. All right. Anything else you got to cover off before we head on out of here?
Don't think so, mate. I think we're all set. We've got Joe Joyce is fighting Zhang in boxing. Yeah, it is what it is. Interim WBO World Heavyweight title. It's not Tyson Fury. It's not Alexander Usyk. It's not Anthony Joshua. It's not Deontay Wilder. It is what it is. Tune in to watch it because someone's getting knocked out. It's probably going to be Zhang, but it is what it is.
You think we're ever going to get the Usyk signing?
I mean, Usyk, from what I understand, is fighting Daniel Dubois next. So that's his next mandatory. But who knows? Who knows? These guys are, they're not Benjamin Button. They're not getting any younger. So let's hope that they get it signed first. But one person to look out for on this Joyce versus Zhang card is a guy with potentially the best name I've ever heard, Freezy McBones.
That's a fake name.
Freezy McBones is taking on 103-1 Daryl Sharp. That's his record. 103 losses.
No.
1 draw.
No, it's not.
Freezy McBones.
100. This is fake. This is made up.
103 losses taking on Freezy McBones. How
is this real life? Boxing is supposed to be the more professional one. Like this is ludicrous.
It's great. Boxing's gonna boxing, and this is the most boxing thing I've ever seen. But realistically, tune in for the PFL, tune in for the Joyce versus Zhang main event, tune in for the UFC because that UFC fight card, top to bottom, is an absolute banger. It's a strong UFC fight card. So yeah, maybe, and I'll update you guys on Freezy McBones next week. Remind me, and I'll update you on how he wins, not if he wins, how he wins.
Absolutely ridiculous. Frazer, thanks so much for your time. Links will be down below for everyone. Have a great week, sir.
Thank you. Cheers.